Saturday mornings weren't just about cartoons, they were portals into worlds colliding. Hanna-Barbera, masters of the animated multiverse, dared to mix characters in ways fans never saw coming. Some crossovers delighted, others baffled, and a few became legends whispered about decades later. What happens when Scooby meets Batman, or Fred Flintstone shakes hands with George Jetson? Let's dive in. The new Scooby-Doo movies, 1972-1973. When Hanna-Barbera unveiled the new Scooby-Doo movies in 1972, fans thought they'd just get longer mysteries. What they didn't expect was Scooby-Doo teaming up with real-world celebrities and superheroes. The most shocking? Batman and Robin joining Mystery Inc. in full animated camp. The episodes, The Dynamic Scooby-Doo Affair and The Caped Crusader Caper, blended Saturday morning mystery with Gotham-style justice. Imagine the Batmobile pulling up next to the Mystery Machine and Velma quizzing Robin about utility belts. The crossover was both bizarre and brilliant, merging Scooby's slapstick scares with DC Comics' crime-fighting duo. Behind the scenes, this collaboration wasn't accidental. CBS wanted to capitalize on Batman's popularity after the 1960s live-action show faded but still held cultural weight. Hanna-Barbera delivered campy humor but kept Batman strangely earnest, creating an odd tonal mismatch that fans still debate today. Critics were split. Was this genius marketing or a betrayal of mystery-solving purity? Yet, decades later, those crossovers remain iconic. They sparked a generation's first introduction to Batman outside comics. For kids, it didn't matter if it was silly. It was unforgettable. In hindsight, it marked the beginning of Hanna-Barbera's boldest storytelling gambles. It's a reminder that even the most mismatched worlds can collide in ways that define childhood. The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, 1987. By the late 1980s, Hanna-Barbera was searching for ways to refresh its classics. The answer? The first ever full-length feature crossover, The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones. The concept was simple, yet radical. What if prehistory met the future? The movie transported George Jetson and his family back to bedrock, while Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble ended up in Orbit City. The result was chaos. Dinosaurs and flying cars, stone tools and robots, all colliding in one animated spectacle. Fans were astonished. Never before had Hanna-Barbera merged its two crown jewels so directly. Production, however, wasn't easy. Writers struggled with tone. Should it lean prehistoric slapstick or futuristic satire? They compromised with a mix, but some critics claimed it felt like two half-baked episodes stitched together. Still, for fans, it was magical, a once-in-a-lifetime crossover that fulfilled playground debates. Who's cooler, Fred or George? The film aired in syndication, gaining cult status despite lukewarm reviews. Its legacy lives on as a cultural experiment, proving Hanna-Barbera was willing to risk absurdity to keep its icons alive. The Jetsons meeting the Flintstones wasn't perfect, but it was unforgettable. Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters, 1972, 1973, 1981. Scooby-Doo was no stranger to celebrity guests, but nothing compared to the animated whirlwind of the Harlem Globetrotters. In both the new Scooby-Doo movies and later TV specials, the Globetrotters joined Mystery Inc. to solve ghostly capers, while performing dazzling basketball stunts. Fans were stunned by the audacity. Ghosts chased through haunted mansions, suddenly interrupted by spinning basketball tricks. It was surreal, almost dreamlike, yet kids adored it. For Hanna-Barbera, this was cross-promotion gold. The Globetrotters, already cultural superstars, gained new audiences through Scooby's loyal Saturday morning fans. But production was chaotic. Animators often recycled the same dribbling and slam dunk sequences, creating a hypnotic, almost eerie repetition. Some critics mocked the absurdity. Why call the Globetrotters to fight ghosts? Yet the formula worked, leading to multiple appearances and cementing the Globetrotters as recurring cartoon heroes. In hindsight, this crossover is pure 1970s charm, an unlikely blend of pop culture, sports, and mystery that remains strangely timeless. It proves Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to bend reality if it meant capturing the imagination of children everywhere. Scooby-Doo meets Laurel and Hardy, 1972. When the new Scooby-Doo movies rolled out, nobody anticipated seeing silent-era comedy icons Laurel and Hardy sharing the screen with Shaggy and Scooby. By the early 1970s, Laurel and Hardy had long passed their prime. Stan Laurel had died in 1965, and Oliver Hardy in 1957. So how did they appear? Through Hanna-Barbera's animated adaptation of their likenesses, complete with sound-alike voice actors. For children, the pairing was strange. Scooby and Shaggy's modern slapstick blended with the classic physical comedy of Laurel and Hardy, creating a time-warped spectacle. Critics at the time called it a history lesson disguised as a cartoon, though many argued the humor felt outdated for young audiences. Behind the scenes, the decision came from CBS executives who believed introducing kids to past comedy legends could revive interest in Laurel and Hardy reruns. Animation-wise, the crossover required extra care. Hanna-Barbera's animators leaned into exaggerated facial expressions and old-fashioned pratfalls, a stark contrast to the spooky gags Scooby fans were used to. Reception was mixed, but for many parents, it was a nostalgic thrill to see childhood heroes revived for their own kids. It was a reminder that Hanna-Barbera's crossovers weren't just about gimmicks. They were cultural bridges, connecting generations through Saturday morning television. The Flintstones Meet Rockin' Wrestling, 1985. In the mid-1980s, professional wrestling was booming, and Hanna-Barbera wanted in on the action. The result was one of their strangest crossovers. The Flintstones and WWE, Stone Age SmackDown. Though a later version aired in 2015, the seeds were planted decades earlier when wrestling icons guest-starred in Flintstones-themed specials. The 1985 televised experiments featured wrestlers like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, reimagined in cartoon form, mixing prehistoric antics with over-the-top wrestling spectacle. Fans were shocked. Bedrock, with its Brontosaurus-powered appliances, suddenly hosted wrestling rings where Wilma cheered from the sidelines. Behind the scenes, this crossover was more marketing than storytelling. Vince McMahon's WWF, now WWE, saw cartoons as a gateway to younger fans, while Hanna-Barbera sought to inject modern relevance into its aging franchise. Critics derided the clunky writing, but kids tuned in, dazzled by Hulk Hogan suplexing cavemen. While the experiment faded quickly, its legacy lived on, resurfacing 3 decades later with the 2015 movie. Whether fans loved or hated it, the crossover proved Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to chase cultural waves, even if it meant blending prehistoric humor with body slams. It stands as a bizarre relic of pop culture fusion, one that shocked viewers by asking, what if Fred Flintstone was a wrestling promoter? Scooby-Doo meets Sonny and Cher, 1972. In 1972, Scooby-Doo added a glittering surprise to its guest list, pop icons Sonny and Cher. The famous singing duo joined Mystery Inc. in an episode where they battled a haunted hotel. For audiences, it was a jarring mix, rock stars who topped the charts suddenly cracking jokes with Shaggy while chasing ghosts. The episode, The Secret of Shark Island, became infamous for its surreal charm. Cher, ever glamorous, was animated with flowing hair and dazzling outfits, while Sonny provided bumbling comic relief. Scooby's ghost-hunting antics meshed with the duo's real-life banter, creating a strangely hypnotic blend of music, mystery, and comedy. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera leaned heavily on Sonny and Cher's TV variety show popularity. CBS wanted cross-promotion, banking on their star power to pull in teenage viewers. Animators worked overtime to capture Cher's distinctive look, something rare for Hanna-Barbera's usually simplified character designs. Critics dismissed it as shallow stunt casting, but fans adored the novelty. For many, it remains one of the most remembered episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies. Looking back, it's a snapshot of a psychedelic era where television blurred lines between cartoons, pop music, and celebrity spectacle. Scooby and Cher may have been an odd match, but together they created television magic. Yogi's Ark Lark, 1972. Before Marvel and DC built billion-dollar multiverses, Hanna-Barbera tried their own. In 1972, Yogi's Ark Lark aired as part of the ABC Saturday Superstar movie, bringing together an entire roster of Hanna-Barbera's biggest names. Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss, and even Wally Gator all boarded a flying ark to search for a cleaner, better world. Fans were astonished. It wasn't just a cameo or a one-off team-up. This was the first time nearly every Hanna-Barbera headliner appeared in a single storyline. Kids watching in 1972 suddenly saw their favorite characters colliding in one epic cartoon, years before the word crossover even became trendy. Behind the scenes, however, production was rushed. Writers struggled to juggle so many personalities, often giving characters only a handful of lines. Animators recycled movements to meet deadlines, and critics complained the plot felt like an environmental sermon more than a Saturday morning escape. Yet the message, clean up the earth or risk losing it, was bold for its time. Despite its flaws, Yogi's Ark Lark became the seed for Yogi's Gang, 1973, a full series expanding the crossover universe. Today, it's remembered as Hanna-Barbera's first attempt at a mega crossover, decades before Hollywood perfected the formula. It proved that even cartoon animals could carry a moral, while still making kids laugh. Scooby-Doo Meets the Addams Family, 1972. Long before Tim Burton revived the Addamses, Scooby-Doo got there first. In a 1972 episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies, Mystery Inc. traveled to a spooky mansion, only to find it belonged to the Addams family. Fans couldn't believe it. Hanna-Barbera was blending its goofy ghost hunters with America's creepiest family. This crossover was part of a bigger strategy. Hanna-Barbera had just secured rights to create an animated Addams Family spin-off, and this Scooby episode served as a backdoor pilot. Morticia, Gomez, and the gang were animated with Hanna-Barbera's signature flair, but with just enough gothic charm to stand apart. Behind the scenes, animators faced a challenge: how to make the macabre Addamses palatable for a Saturday morning slot. Writers toned down the darkness, leaning into absurd humor. Still, the mere idea of two spooky franchises colliding thrilled kids and baffled parents. Reviews were mixed. Some called it genius, others saw it as a tonal clash. Yet the legacy is undeniable. The episode kept the Addams family alive in pop culture, eventually leading to their full animated series in 1973. For Scooby fans, it remains one of the strangest yet most beloved mysteries. It was proof that sometimes the creepiest houses hide the most delightful surprises. Laugh Olympics, 1977-1979. By the late 1970s, Hanna-Barbera launched one of its most ambitious crossovers ever, Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics. The concept? A parody of the Olympics where nearly every Hanna-Barbera character competed in zany competitions. Teams were divided into the Scooby-Doobies, the Yogi Yahooies, and the Really Rottens. Fans were shocked. This wasn't a EBI simple team-up. It was a full sports league of cartoon icons. Imagine Scooby-Doo racing against Hong Kong Phooey, or Captain Caveman battling Dick Dastardly. It was chaos, but it was irresistible. Behind the scenes, the series was a logistical nightmare. With over 45 characters appearing, writers constantly juggled screen time. Some characters were voiced by the same actor, forcing rapid-fire switches mid-scene. Animation shortcuts became infamous. Races often showed the same backgrounds repeated endlessly. Critics mocked it as silly fluff, but kids adored it. The crossover gave forgotten characters like Grape Ape or Speed Buggy a new spotlight, while cementing Hanna-Barbera's reputation as the king of cartoon ensembles. Though short-lived, Laugh Olympics became legendary. It was Hanna-Barbera at its most daring, turning beloved characters into athletes and rivals, proving the studio's multiverse had no limits. It was less about winning gold and more about winning childhood memories. The Flintstones Meet the Thing, 1979. In 1979, Hanna-Barbera pulled off a crossover that left kids' jaws on the floor. Fred and Barney Meet the Thing. Airing as part of a Saturday morning block, it bizarrely combined the Flintstones with Marvel Comics' orange-skinned powerhouse from Fantastic Four. But here's the twist. It wasn't really Marvel's thing. Instead, Hanna-Barbera reimagined Ben Grimm as a nerdy teenager who could magically transform into the Thing by clinking two magic rings together and shouting, "Thing ring, do your thing." Fans were stunned, and comic purists were outraged. This wasn't the Thing they knew. It was a sanitized Saturday morning version stripped of his gruff personality and tragic backstory. Behind the scenes, the mashup was pure business. Marvel wanted its characters in animation, and Hanna-Barbera was eager to latch onto superhero trends. Yet the odd pairing with Fred and Barney, who barely interacted with the Thing, made the crossover confusing. The two shows simply aired together under one title, leaving many viewers scratching their heads. Still, for kids tuning in, seeing Bedrock collide with comic book powers felt surreal. Critics dismissed it as clumsy branding, but decades later, it's remembered as one of Hanna-Barbera's strangest experiments. It proved that sometimes shock value alone is enough to etch a crossover into history. Scooby-Doo meets Josie and the Pussycats, 1972. By the early 70s, Hanna-Barbera had multiple mystery-solving teams on TV, and one of them, Josie and the Pussycats, was making waves with its groovy music and globe-trotting adventures. So when the two franchises collided in the new Scooby-Doo movies, fans couldn't believe their eyes. In the episode, the two groups joined forces to unravel a spooky case, with Josie's bandmates lending musical flair while Scooby and Shaggy delivered comic relief. For kids, it felt like worlds colliding, two ensembles with similar formulas suddenly side by side. Behind the scenes, it was a savvy move. CBS wanted to boost ratings for Josie and the Pussycats, which was struggling against Scooby's dominance. By pairing them together, Hanna-Barbera hoped Scooby's loyal audience would transfer to Josie. The result was a campy, chaotic blend of music, mystery, and mayhem. Critics noted how redundant the crossover felt, two Velma-like brains, two cowardly goofballs, but fans didn't care. For them, it was a once-in-a-lifetime musical mystery mash. Looking back, it was proof that Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to merge formulas, even if it meant double the chaos. The Jetsons and WWE Robo-WrestleMania, 2017. While most Hanna-Barbera crossovers came in the 70s and 80s, one of the most shocking happened decades later. In 2017, Warner Brothers revived the Jetsons for a direct-to-video crossover with WWE. Yes, the family from Orbit City found themselves ringside with John Cena, The Big Show, and other modern wrestling icons. The plot was as wild as it sounds. George Jetson unfreezes Big Show from cryogenic stasis, unleashing chaos in the future. To stop him, the Jetsons recruit WWE superstars, leading to a showdown that blended wrestling theatrics with Jetsonian gadgetry. Fans were bewildered. Some saw it as sacrilege. Why drag Hanna-Barbera's futuristic icons into wrestling spectacle? Others embraced the absurdity, calling it a cult classic in the making. Behind the scenes, it was all about branding synergy. WWE had already teamed with Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones in previous animated specials. The Jetsons were next in line, even if it meant forcing a collision between 1960s retro futurism and 21st century wrestling bravado. Though polarizing, it shocked fans simply by existing. And in its bizarre way, it gave the Jetsons one final hurrah in pop culture. It showed that even decades later, Hanna-Barbera's worlds could still surprise and confuse audiences. Scooby-Doo meets Blue Falcon and Dynamite, 1976, revived in 2013. Mystery Inc. meets superhero parody. In 1976, Hanna-Barbera spun off Dynamite, Dog Wonder, pairing the robotic pup and his Batman-like partner, Blue Falcon, with Scooby-Doo in the Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour. At the time, fans were stunned. This wasn't a guest cameo, but a full-on shared universe. Mystery Inc. often joined Blue Falcon's high-tech battles, blending traditional ghost mysteries with comic book superhero antics. Kids loved the mix, though critics noted the tonal whiplash. One minute Scooby and Shaggy were terrified of ghosts, the next they were chasing real supervillains alongside a robotic dog. Decades later, the crossover returned in the 2013 film Scooby-Doo, Mask of the Blue Falcon, reviving the duo for a new generation. This meta-take mocked superhero reboots while celebrating Hanna-Barbera's legacy. Behind the scenes, the pairing made sense. Scooby was TV's reigning canine, while Dynamite was struggling to stand out. The crossover gave him exposure and cemented Blue Falcon as a cult hero in the Hanna-Barbera pantheon. It remains a shocking example of how Scooby became the studio's glue, tying together wildly different worlds. They weren't just cartoons, they were cultural collisions, stitched together by imagination. Which one shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.